Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Tuesday, April the 28th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria, BC. I'd like to thank the volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes the show happen. The first part of Citizens Forum is always the Walter and Jack show, and Walter, it's been an even crazier week. This afternoon, Dave Broadland and Leslie Campbell of Focus magazine were on the radio on CFAX, and they did about a 20-minute segment about what's going on in Saanich, and I think they started off by saying that from their investigation, and Focus magazine does good investigating, I think what they said was they believe that Mayor Richard Atwell's computer was targeted and the spyware was put onto other computers as a cover so they could say they weren't targeting him. I think that's what was said. So, and Saanich Council refuses, at this point in time, to allow an independent investigation. And nothing seems to be happening. The weeks are going by, and it's a big problem, and it's symbolic of so much that's wrong in our society. And I don't know what the people of Saanich can do. I think I'd be tempted to, if the majority of people in Saanich, and we don't even know, but if the majority are upset by this, by what's going on, then I think they have the right, as the public, to stop the next Saanich Council meeting, let's say for a symbolic 5 minutes, and just say, this isn't acceptable. We want to find out the truth. I mean, is that too much to ask? We want to find out the truth about...
They should all resign, Jack. Let's get right to it. I would resign. It's a shameful thing. They don't know what to do with themselves. Really, they don't. And they're trying to figure out a cover-up, but there's nothing that can cover this up. I think what Dave Broadland's saying is really, really right to the nub of it. They targeted Atwell. They did these other things to make it look like they were putting spyware on others. To think that that's the depth of it, and maybe the council didn't fully understand what the staff was up to. Well, we can't say it's the staff. Whoever made that decision, but nevertheless, it's such a breach of trust for the public, and for them to accept anybody's opinion that this is okay without checking it. When it's fundamentally, they broke the law. So, the council, the only thing they should do is either all resign, or they should have a re-election. They just simply should have another election and elect another council, because these people can't be trusted. That's the bottom line. They're the council for the municipality which I live in.
Wow, it's unfortunate that things have come to such a point that's where we are, and we see something happening on a much bigger scale in Baltimore. By the way, did you print off that paper?
I'll take a look at it while you're talking.
Okay. So I saw President Obama on TV talking about these people are not protesting, they are robbers, something like that. And I mean, that's kind of true, but I mean, to have Barack Obama, who was involved in like trillions of dollars worth of robbing from the American people to pay the banksters and the fraudsters and the crooks who run the United States banking system and seem to run the entire United States, for him to say that these people are robbers, I mean, it's just, and the media's role is to play it up as if it's all true, without mocking him for a second. I mean, the man is involved with massive torture, war crimes. I mean, what they're doing in the Middle East. And I don't blame Obama, he's just a puppet. But things are getting very, very explosive in the United States. And I honestly don't know if it's the power structure that's trying to make it happen. A very famous Baltimore athlete was on, I just heard a couple of minutes on the radio this morning. He was begging young people to get off the street. He said, we know what they're doing to us. And he didn't mean the police. He meant the people who run the police and the people who run the United States. We know what they're doing. They want us out in the streets, is what he was saying. So don't do it. Don't give it to them. It was, I mean, I don't know what's going on down there anymore, but it's getting crazy, and it's coming here too.
There's so many troubling trends in the United States. I mean, and I don't follow the popular media every day, but you know, you don't have to. The same story, young black man shot in the back by a police officer. You know, almost every time you look at any media down there, there's some black kid getting shot, and it's the casualness of the white police officers, how it doesn't seem to be a big deal for them to pull out their gun and kill someone. So,
but I also get the feeling that the power structure is building this up now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, nothing they say on the media is the truth. So why are they telling this story? And they've been telling it for a couple of years, right? And what they're not doing, what nobody's doing, is saying, okay, we're going to solve the problem. Here's how we're going to solve the problem. There seems to be no plan or no interest in solving the problem. I mean, where's Obama about solving that problem? Shouldn't the entire U.S. government be involved in solving that problem? But it's never mentioned. It just goes on, and it's almost like they are using it to further divide the American people. They've got the American people divided so many different ways.
The division, the real meaningful division, is the dichotomy between the rich and the poor.
Yeah, and that's the one that's,
you know, not the rich and the powerful, the poor and the powerless, and you know, disproportionate amount of people are people of color that are powerless. But the structure that's creating it is a very rich elite that won't stop at anything to stay in control. That's the bottom line. They'll do whatever it takes.
And I think that is exactly right. That's the bottom line. There's a very rich and very powerful elite that runs the United States, and another one, or the same one, that runs this country, and they are the problem. That's where we have to focus our effort and our energy. And the only way I can think of to do it is to build media, because we've got to be able to tell our story, whatever our story is. And we've got to have democracy so that what we want actually matters for something. And, you know, which leads into something you were talking about earlier. What's going on now with the sewage treatment thing?
Right.
You know, it's like there seems to be a plan right now to redo the old plan, the $1 billion down the drain with no environmental benefit plan. That may still be the plan.
It is the plan.
Oh, God.
That's what's so frightening. If they had another plan, if they looked at the other issues, you know, and even these decentralized sewage treatment, which seemed to be such a wonderful idea, somehow or other they can't look at that issue carefully. They have to continue on down this road. Now, this is not normal. This is like we're getting into some kind of, the behavior is just weird. You know, it's just, it would give lunatics a bad name. They shouldn't, you know, they should know that this is never going to fly. And that's the sad part of it, is they keep warning us, oh, we're going to lose all this federal funding, you know, and there was a couple of people who commented on that. The feds don't seem to be that concerned about it. One letter extended their deadline.
Yeah, why? Yeah.
You know, so they're holding this over our heads. But the people have to understand that if they make a mistake and build something that really doesn't work and is wildly expensive, the federal funding is not going to protect you. The local taxpayers are going to pick up the tab forever. And the federal funding is a very fixed amount. If you go over, we pay for it. And how many projects have we ever seen that came in on budget? So we know that they could run into several $100 million of overcharges on this thing, and it would create havoc here. We would have $1,000, maybe $1,500 a year raise in our taxes to pay for something we don't need.
And that may be the plan.
It seems to be, and it's too bad that Lisa Helps is jumped into this both feet and scurrying around looking for another place to build the plant.
Or plants.
Yeah, well, it says plant in the paper,
Yeah,
Jack.
it says plant or plants.
Okay.
But it says plant or plants.
Yeah.
Which may mean that they have gone now from one plant in Esquimalt, which Esquimalt, thank goodness, vetoed. So we couldn't waste the $1 billion there now. Now they may be saying one plant for the east sector, and who knows what they'll do in the west sector.
The west one for
We don't know,
yeah.
but they're talking about. I mean, this is the TC. Is it today?
Yeah.
So Tuesday the 28th. And they're talking about the program being complete, the plan being in place by the end of June.
Right.
Which is the end of, just about next month.
Well, it's just as nutty as everything else, so they might as well set a deadline that's nutty, because everything they're doing doesn't make any sense. Hopefully,
because we don't know what kind of plants we're building, I don't think.
No.
Or how many.
Oh, how do you stop them? Are they all trying to fulfill the mandate, that platform they ran in the last election saying, by golly, we're going to get this thing built, vote for me and we'll get the sewage treatment plant built? I never heard anybody saying that. So what is it that they think they have a mandate to do this? What is the plan? The plan is, Jack, some people are going to make a lot of money off this deal. That's the plan. And taxpayers are going to pay for it, big time, if they're allowed to get away with it. But I'm at a loss too. Like, how do you stop them? It really, it looks like we're going to have demonstrations or riots in the streets before they pay attention.
I mean, focusing on this issue, it seems like the public should, at least we should know from our elected officials, what kind of system and what cost we're looking at and how many sites.
Yeah.
I mean, is all that going to be decided from a standing start in 2 months?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it is. Maybe this is all going to be great. But I think all of us had better really keep our eye on this issue, because I think they said the end of June, right?
That's right.
Well, if that's the plan, then this could get run by before we even know it's happening. I mean, if you wouldn't have told me about this meeting that's happening tomorrow, Wednesday, April the 29th, at the Royal BC Museum, so I'm going to go and try and see what it's all about, but if you hadn't mentioned, I wouldn't even...
Yeah, well, it's very hard to figure out in the paper. They're not really encouraging public participation.
The Times columnist not encouraging public participation.
They put the place where it's going to happen buried in the column, and then right at the very end they put the time. I had to study this article very carefully to try to figure out where I might be able to go.
Well, public participation is important. Maybe lots of people know about this. But it seems to be moving ahead quite quickly now, and I, as a resident of the city of Victoria, am almost completely in the dark, and I think a lot of people are in the dark, and that's not really a good thing.
Well, there's a lot of problems with local governance, Jack, and we'll have to get into it and talk about it. And I've been making calls around whenever I get a moment, talking to the CRD and the councillors and trying to figure out how it all works. We don't have any governance at a regional governance structure that really works.
And we can't stop, like for example, in Saanich, if the people of Saanich want an independent investigation, what method do they use to make that happen? There seems to be no
Oh, if you're
way.
talking about the
Well, yeah, moving back to that.
Atwell situation.
Yeah.
And I called the Ministry of Justice was it Justice Ministry?
Either way, I don't think there's much
and,
justice.
it was just a runaround. It's basically when a government, like a municipal government's in trouble and should be investigated, it doesn't seem like there's anybody that automatically would step in to make sure that these guys are abiding by the laws.
You know what? We used to have that woman who was the municipal auditor,
Yeah, she's gone now.
and she's gone.
She would have had a good job to do that.
You know, it's interesting that she suddenly disappeared almost
Yeah.
out of the blue.
It seems like, when people behave that way, and in any other business, by the way, you get fired. Heads roll. Things happen. They're trying to salvage the reputation of the company. But these guys are so inept at it. I mean, there's two things about a crime. It's the crime itself and then the cover-up. And the cover-up here is ridiculous. They're dragging their feet, and you can imagine how lame the announcement's going to be at the end about what they thought happened.
Unless we citizens can
Right.
overcome them. I was listening to CFAX a couple of days ago, and they had a program on that was kind of promoting the evil campaign to vaccinate us all. I don't remember who the hostess was, but they were talking about Australia has just taken a big step towards, and this guest was on. I couldn't listen to it, so I really don't know what was said. I just can't listen to that stuff anymore. But it's amazing to see, and CFAC's doing it as if they care about public health. That's why they're interested in vaccinating us. It's because they care about public health. And I don't want to pick on CFAX, but just the corporate-owned media in general. About 15 years ago, 5,000 Canadians were killed by the drug Vioxx, and in the States it was probably about 50,000. And I mean, somebody mentioned that to me a couple of years ago, and I had never heard anything about it. 5,000 people killed by the drug Vioxx, 50,000 in the States, thousands and thousands more injured through heart attacks. And they kept it all quiet. That's how much the media cares about your health. So when they tell you that they're going to vaccinate you because of your health, run the other way. I got a question for you.
Oh, you're doing so well. You can continue
Or
on.
carry on. I'm finished. Do you want me to ask a question? What's the biggest threat to Canada? ISIS or corporate Canada?
Oh, that's the question. Well, ISIS and corporate Canada are the same thing, aren't they? I got you on
Thought of
that.
that one. Yeah.
But yeah, the point is well taken. It's so ridiculous how this whipping up of fear of terrorism is so Orwellian and backwards, and it's troubling, to see it go on like that, because they push it at the people every day, and it seems to work. The sad part of it is most people seem to be absorbing that and thinking we got a huge terrorist problem.
Walter, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Hello and welcome to segment 2 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, April the 28th in the Memorial Arena. Our guest in this segment is Darren Alexander. And Darren, you are planning a conference kind of called Media, Democracy, and You. So thank you very much for doing that.
Well, thanks for the thanks, and it's been a pleasure. I got to say, connecting with so many journalists, media scholars, social justice advocates. We're bringing all of these people together, well, not all of them, but a good many of them, close to 20 speakers will be part of that day on Saturday, June 6th, kicking off what this banner of Media Democracy Days in Victoria.
Yeah. So what's the aim?
The aim is, I thought you might ask. The aim
Since you gave me the question.
is really to provoke and probe, to bring to the public an opportunity to really discuss and kind of toss around different ideas, different perspectives, different points of view around our relationship with our media. That's the media that gives us our news in particular is what we're focusing on here. So where we get our news, where do we look for it? What kind of news do we get? What kind of news are we not getting? Why is the news that we want not in some places, but to be found in others?
Can we trust it?
Can we trust certain sources? All of these themes, I guess, will be tumbled around on that day through a variety of panels with these a slew of speakers, an impressive roster of speakers, including yourself, and they, as I say,
and local.
They're journalists, they're media producers, they're scholars, they're activists and advocates, and they'll be grappling with a lot of these questions. Do we have a free press? What kind of shape is our democracy, and why is it working or not? How do you find the news that feeds us? In other words, that gives us the information.
Also, how do we make the news that feeds
and
us?
Also, how do we make the news? How can we be a part of the news? How can we change our orientation from being passive consumers of news to actually being participants in the news or producers of the news?
And you were telling me about the layout of the day, and it sounds like actually that activist part is a fairly big part.
Absolutely, yeah. In a number of ways. There's the advocacy around democratic issues. And in that regard, we have representatives from Fair Vote Canada, from the BC Civil Liberties Association will be joining us, people speaking to matters of our democracy, quite literally. Representation, different kinds of voting systems. And then that tie-in with, well, what does media have to do with that? How does the media that we engage with or that we choose to participate in affect our democratic interests, our social interests, our individual interests? Yeah. These are the kinds of questions.
I mean, to me, there's nothing more important in moving ahead to something. Moving ahead towards better things, for all of us, is honest media. What I'd like to see also come out of it is kind of people having an opportunity to maybe join a group that is going to be working here to build something. I don't know what.
I love the idea. I hope this is also a networking opportunity for all of these people coming together, the audience on the one hand and the presenters on the other, and so out of that, I like to think that there will be lots of synergy, and exchange, and opportunities to come out of that. There's hopefully there, and Media Democracy Days is something that I like to think is here to stay. So this was the launch officially, but it's and this will be there's a slate of events, by the way, not just this day of panels coming on board, workshops.
When is it?
In early June. The day of panels is Saturday, June the 6th, but before that day and throughout the week after are now a number of events have come on board.
Oh,
And we're adding more every day. Opportunities to learn how to be a citizen journalist, how to improve your video work, how to get involved in radio and podcasting. The list is growing, and we're bringing on board organizations like MediaNet, Cinevic, these independent producing kind of cooperatives, CFUV Radio, and other organizations too are just it's just a growing roster, as I say. Best place to find out about what's going on at this time is our Facebook event page. It's Media Democracy Days Victoria, and you can look that up on Facebook. We're updating that constantly.
Where's it going to be?
Oh, good question.
Yeah.
Victoria Event Centre
Okay.
on Broad Street for that Saturday day of panels. And the other events are these satellite events taking place in different locations. I should mention it's where Sunset Room is providing live stream coverage of the event.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
And Kirk Schwartz via MediaNet has kindly come on board to be offering a workshop for teens the same day so that they can bring their devices, their iPad, their iPhone, their mobile phone, and he will be showing them, teaching them, training them, kind of capacity building with this team of teens to engage them as citizen journalists on that day, interviewing panelists, covering the day, and reporting.
And maybe throwing it onto the live
and
stream.
it'll go
or
onto
something
the
like that.
live stream, yes. So we'll
Plus, we're planning to make the documentary.
oh yes, the great documentary of the
And
day.
show it on Channel 4.
And it'll be on Channel 4. There's the debate that you've worked hard
Right,
to
right.
to
Well, I haven't
to
worked that
arrange.
hard, but
Well,
I
it's
think-
coming together. A debate of Oak-based students. It sounds like.
And that will be hopefully on Citizens Forum a week or two before the Media Democracy and You conference.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a sort of a formal debate in what the teacher called parliamentary style, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't even know what that means. And I know nothing about debating, but I wish I knew more about debating, so I'm looking forward to seeing this. And they're going to kind of take this general topic, and it should be
The
interesting.
media democracy topic. Yeah. It
So we got
sounds
a minute
great.
and a half left.
Okay.
What's left to
Well,
say?
I could. There's. I almost hate to get into the list of individuals involved in the day, because then I would mention some and
Yeah,
leave
right,
out
right, right,
others,
right.
and that doesn't sound. See,
Yeah,
that's
no,
not
that
very
doesn't sound good.
democratic at all. So I suggest that anybody interested to go to. The confirmed speakers are now on the Facebook event page, and as I say, we're still working out that day. There's a few more to be confirmed.
Okay. So we've got a very little bit of time left. How important is media to democracy?
Media to democracy is like this. It's intricately and inextricably connected. In order for there to be true democracy, citizens need to be informed. For citizens to be informed, media has to be doing its job. And it's got to be doing a job with some integrity, with some sincerity, and with some good intention. A profit-based media, corporate media in other words, sometimes called mainstream media, is not generally interested in much else outside of the profit. And that's problematic for democracy. And that's where independent and alternative media outlets come in, and they can kind of fill those gaps.
And we're out of time.
And we're out of time.
Thank you very much for saying that. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome to segment 3 of Citizens Forum. Our guest in this segment is Will Smith. We're going to start by talking about money, and then we're going to move on to something more interesting. So, Will, money.
Well, I just, watching the show and of course directing the show, I hear all these guests, and there's been some kind of a case in the Supreme Court about the Bank of Canada not issuing money for the past 30 years or something. And I'm just surprised that, I just want to mention that I'm surprised that nobody has brought that up on the show, because when I was growing up and I would visit Ontario, the Canadian dollar was over parity. It was worth more. We'd get 6 cents.
Now, when you say visit Ontario, you're coming up from the States.
Yeah, I was coming up from the United States, and you know, the Canadian dollar was worth more than the American dollar. And then evidently the country got talked into letting international bankers run the economy, and they said, well, you know, we need to stabilize your exchange rate so it doesn't fluctuate too much. And so I guess, I don't really know because I wasn't around, but everybody said yes, in the government anyway. And as a result,
Actually, they just never told us. They just did it.
yeah, so I mean, I remember at the time living in Costa Rica, there were a lot of Canadians that lived there, and they were complaining bitterly because the Canadian dollar was worth 60 or 70 cents. And then the other thing is that all the money that's been issued since that time, I guess the interest that the Canadian people have been paying on that is over $1 trillion. So to have somebody tell you, you know, this would be really good for your foreign exchange, if it would stabilize your foreign exchange if you just let us run your currency instead of letting your government do that. And then here we are 30-some years later, and the truth of the matter is the Canadians have been taken for over $1 trillion, and that money probably could have been spent on something different. And people who were living in a different place would have arguably been better off because their dollar would have been worth more. So I don't know, I would think, I don't know, I would think somebody would be interested in talking about that and maybe changing something, but that's...
I mean, I don't even know what's going on, and I'm interested in the topic. But yes, a case was or has or is being brought before the Supreme Court of Canada. I don't know exactly what, but it's about the Bank of Canada, and the media will not say one word about it. It's like, what a blackout. How corrupt is the Canadian?
So I think we should
Not
have somebody,
one word.
we should have somebody on here to talk about that.
That's a great idea.
And then the other thing I just wanted to bring up was I saw Titanic, the movie Titanic, which was made, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, and I never saw it. And it's a long movie. I think it's 3 hours long, so I wasn't wasn't excited about going to see it. But anyway, I finally saw it, and I thought it was a really fitting allegory or picture of what we're going through now, because the ships, the bulkheads have been breached. I mean, whether you look at the financial system that was detonated in 2008, or you look at the food chain crashes that are going on, or you look at the climate change, or you look at the political systems, you gotta be real and say the chances are 100% that one of these systems is going to fail, and probably during my lifetime. So these are things that are happening right now, and yet you see people running around worried about stuff that's just not important. So I think Titanic is a great movie to see if you kind of want to understand how people get into this mode of being in total denial about what's going on and don't want to look at it. So I'd recommend that movie as a picture of our lives right now. What do you think about that?
Well, unfortunately, I think you're probably right. Yeah, it does seem a bit like the Titanic. I would say that the reason a lot of people aren't more actively interested in it is because there's this huge cover-up going on. It's never mentioned. I mean,
yeah,
all of these things. I mean,
well, I think the world has to
in
make
big
sense.
trouble.
I mean, I mentioned that I think that's the way I closed my last interview, is the world has to make sense. And so, I just think everybody can look at the world around them right now and say, how does the world make sense to me? And it may be, the world may make sense to you because you are a Christian fundamentalist and you think that we're in the end times and it's all going to get destroyed. Or you might think that we're going to have a breakthrough of science and our technology is going to solve all these myriad problems. Or you may think, I don't know, I think we're just getting pushed into a corner. I think this is some kind of a pinch point in human evolution, and we need to figure out who we are and just stop coming to the planet and pretending it's Disneyland, and we have to actually take some responsibility for what we do as humans. But anyway, I would just sort of suggest to everybody that they can look at what's going on and try to figure out how does the world make sense to me? Because if it doesn't make sense, then you're really in trouble, because you can't process the world anymore, and it's frightening.
Yeah.
And if you can't run a democracy if everybody's frozen in their chairs. Everybody has to be okay and feel like they have some kind of power over the change. And I think we're just way beyond that point, but it still has to make sense.
Yeah, to me, I feel kind of lucky, because to me the world does make sense. And part of that is because I don't believe what the official story.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I'm not concerned that if I don't get vaccinated, the world is going to end. I'm not concerned that I have to watch my cholesterol. I'm not concerned that, with the fear that they send down to us in their television and their movies. I mean, they just send fear, and because I stopped watching their stuff a long time ago, at least, I've managed to avoid some of those things. I think if I believed the official story, I would not know what to do.
So you're saying that the world does make sense to you, and you may not be okay with it, but
yeah, I'm very unhappy with the directions we're going in, but I kind of understand them. Like so many others, I fight to make this a better society. It doesn't seem to be happening. We seem to be, because I just accept there are very powerful forces, evil forces working against us. But I think we can do better. That's the main thing. I think we can do better.
I agree with you. I think we can do better, and the only difference is, I guess what I'm looking at is it's just so ridiculously bad. I think that we're all being forced to look in the mirror. And so even though, like, the president of Monsanto thinks he's green and he's doing a great job of saving the planet because he's providing this fantastic technology, and I think that all of us have these little things that we can't see about ourselves. So the main task right now is the world is in such a shape that we have to look at them in the mirror and say, we got here somehow. Now, what was my part in that, and how can I see the world differently so that I don't need to destroy it in order to live here?
And that's also why we need more media and more democracy, because if we had more media and more democracy, Monsanto could not do to us what they are doing. The problem is we have a corporate dictatorship. Yeah,
but you see what I see, there's a difference there, because I feel like when you talk about these guys, I feel like they're in a boardroom somewhere plotting our death and destruction. So I'm being silly, and I just think that everybody's trying to do something good, even the guy, and the only trouble is really the motivation, because if the overriding motivation is money, then it warps the way we see things, and it warps our decisions. And so I think that that's a basic, but saying, well, corporations are bad, well, they're doing what they're supposed to do. Their corporate charter says they're supposed to make money. And so he's saying, I'm going to save the world. I'm making these wonderful new vegetables that we can use toxic waste on to produce, and all the stuff left over from when we make wars, which are absolutely necessary because that's just the way this place works. I'm just making this silly stream of consciousness thing up, but that's really what the guy believes, obviously, if you read the introduction in his annual report. And so that's just lying, though. That's what I'm saying. The guys on the Titanic, everybody was lying to themselves. So how do we get to where, and that's what I like about this show, is that we seem to have people who are determined that, hey, wait a minute, look at this. There's something going on here that everybody should know about. So I like that part. I bet we're out of time, aren't we?
We're out of time.
Okay.
Thank you
for having me on, and appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome to the last segment of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, April the 28th in the Memorial Arena. I'd like to thank our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff again. That makes it all happen. Our guest in this segment is Adam Olsen. Adam, you are welcome.
Thank you.
You're the interim leader of the Green Party of BC.
Yeah.
I think it would be a great honor to have such a role. How does it feel?
It's been a really amazing experience. I got appointed by the provincial council back in August of 2013 after our previous leader Jane Sturck resigned from the position after the last election, and it's been a really amazing experience for me. I ran in Saanich North in the Islands. That was an incredible amount of growth for me and the opportunity that presented. And then when the party came and asked me if I wanted to be the interim leader, that was a huge honor. And the opportunity to stay involved in British Columbia politics and work alongside Andrew Weaver and the great team that we have both in the legislature and in our staff has been a real highlight of my life so far. And I look forward to building towards the next general election in 2017.
So next provincial election, 2017.
Yeah.
So this I'm going to just shout out a few stats here provided by Fair Vote Canada,
Okay.
and then I'll ask you a question. In the last 30 years, the Canadian Greens have elected in Canada 2 people at the provincial or federal level. So in the last 30 years, the Canadian Greens have elected 2 people. In the USA, and this is with our first past the post voting system. In the USA, with the same voting system, the Greens have elected nobody, I think, to the Congress or the presidency. Mm-hmm. In Britain, the Greens have elected 1 seat in the last 30 years. And in Austria, which has proportional representation, they've elected 136 people. And in Germany, which has proportional representation, they've elected, I think, 413 people. Mm-hmm. So is changing our voting system to a proportional system important for the Green Party?
One of our founding principles, Jack, is participatory democracy. And I think that it's really important that British Columbians and Canadians have a system to elect their representatives in our democracy that is fair and that is just, and that reflects that the number of seats for any party reflects the amount of popular vote that they receive during that election. And I think it's pretty clear that in Canada and in the province of British Columbia, we don't get that from our elections. I think it discourages people from participating in our democracy. And I think that our democracy is significantly weakened because of the first past the post system. Just one correction, I think there's been 3 Greens elected in the first past the post. The leader of the New Brunswick Party is the most recent. I believe his name's David Kuhn.
That's right.
So he's the most recent. But certainly the system, first past the post that we have right now, discourages people from participating because they don't see their vote being reflected in the legislature necessarily.
So as you were saying that, I suddenly realized that if we did have a proportional voting system in British Columbia, we would probably right now have either a Liberal Green or NDP Green or maybe NDP Liberal coalition government. Let's say the coalition included you. I mean, and
well,
that's kind of what we voted for.
You're right. And I think that one of the things that we have to, one of the things that we'd benefit from having electoral reform in the province, and let's just be clear, I think the BC Green Party, it's one of our founding principles. So it's not a question about whether or not we would have a referendum after forming government in 2017, let's just say, about whether or not we were going to bring electoral reform to the province of BC. We would do that. The discussion that we would have would be what kind of proportional representation system best suits British Columbians, and it would be a process of informing and establishing a system for us to achieve the best proportional representation system for the people. But I think that what you've highlighted in your question is that proportional representation brings a scenario where there's a less likelihood for a majority government. And majority governments operate like they have 100% of the vote of British Columbians when in fact they don't. And governments need to represent people whether they voted for them or not. And that is not the system that we have in this province right now. It's not the system that we have federally either. And so electoral reform would ensure that whatever mix, and you highlighted the various mixes that could have occurred, no matter what that mix is, we would have to negotiate, we would have to work together, we would have to collaborate on issues, and it would encourage a different kind of dialogue than I think the partisan banter that we've had back and forth in this province would change significantly.
I do think that if we had, let's say, a liberal green coalition government right now, just to choose one of the many options, that this would be a better province than we have under a Christy Clark dictatorship. So yeah,
right.
that's the importance of it.
Well, there would be certainly things that they would not be able to just do. I mean, there would be lots of conversations that would revolve around, especially if they needed green support. You know, if either of the parties needed green support to move their agendas forward, then we could ensure that, say, something like electoral reform, as an example, or participatory democracy, would be a condition, as an example of other things that they would like to do.
Okay, so let's take just a broad scenario of LNG, Site C, and the pipelines. Now, we all kind of know where we're going with that. Ms. Clark is all in favor of LNG. Let's take that one. What's the Green position on LNG?
Well, look, I think Andrew Weaver has done an amazing job in the BC legislature, and in fact, even before he was elected, in highlighting, and you know, he's been a real leader for British Columbians on this file as the Christy Clark government in heading into the 2013 election put all the eggs in the LNG basket and said that we are going to create this new industry out of nothing, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do. We're, you know, way behind other jurisdictions in the world, and one of the things that Andrew's done very, very well, just purely from an economic standpoint, to say that, look, British Columbia is not going to get the huge windfall that the BC Liberals have predicted and had predicted, 100,000 jobs, $1 trillion hit to the GDP.
Yeah, I seem to remember all that.
Yeah, you know, this message that they brought out, you know, promising us the whole world that LNG was going to bring us. So just on an economic basis alone, we've seen actually that a lot of what Andrew has said historically and that we've stood for
What
hasn't
bothers
panned
me
out.
more about LNG is the environmental side.
Well, there we go.
It
Okay.
seems to be a totally poisonous industry.
So that's right, and so there's the economic discussion, but then there's the environmental discussion around it, which is a really big problem. We have been, you know, hydraulic fracturing in this province for 60 years, but definitely not to the scope and to the scale that the LNG industry. We've not been doing horizontal fracking like they're proposing, and you know, literally hundreds of thousands of wellheads need to be drilled in this province with a tailings pond for each one of them. You know, this toxic concoction of chemicals and water that needs to be then stored, and fences need to be put around it, and you know, scare guns to ensure that birds aren't landing on it because they literally die if they're in there, and the threat to people's drinking water and all sorts of issues that are arising around fracking. There is a tremendous, not even to mention the impact that it will have on climate change in the world. That, you know, there's, I was just in the legislature talking to someone from the insurance industry, talking about climate change, and the insurance industry is really concerned about this and wanting to get more information from my colleague on that. So, you know, I think that I think the environmental aspects of fracking and LNG is very, very troubling. How it gets cooled, how much energy it takes to cool and transport it, and then of course the use of this liquefied natural gas in burning it and putting the hydrocarbons into the
So
air.
I guess the Green Party is looking at transitioning away from that kind of stuff. Where
Yeah,
are
so
we going?
Well, this is going. You know, this is a major piece to the work that we're doing right now. We just have appointed our first critic, is a gentleman by the name of Matt Toner. He's an economist and works in the creative industry over in Vancouver, digital media. And I think that it's just one example of another industry. I mean, we're under the bright lights now, right? So another industry that British Columbia can be investing in, and there's literally hundreds of other industries that are much cleaner, the clean tech industry that British Columbia could be investing in that isn't going to push climate change, speed it up.
Plus
that
poison
it's going to
air,
be
land, and
put,
water.
there you go, exactly. So there are lots of industries that we in British Columbia could be focusing on that are not LNG and fossil fuels. And so Matt, I should just say, Matt is joining the party and coming to work with us because he can bring us expertise in that matter, in that area, and will be helping us develop a platform, a very strong economic platform that can highlight all of the other opportunities that will give British Columbians good, clean, long-lasting, multi-generational jobs.
How about transportation?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it seems like where we should be going towards is trams, and like they have in Europe. All European cities have them, and yet there seems to be such a complete roadblock here. In Vancouver, they've built SkyTrain,
Yeah.
which is a good people mover, but just the noise aspect of it, like anybody who lives around SkyTrain, it's crazy. I don't know why how they dare to do that to people. And plus, SkyTrain is expensive. If you put tracks on the ground, it's a lot cheaper. You can build 5 to 10 times as much. I mean, that's my take on things. So, but in general, what's the Green Party's transportation policy?
Well, look, transportation is a critical part of building and developing communities, and I think that's what's happened. I come from municipal government, and what I see a lot is the pressure to develop, and municipalities do that because they need to. The argument is that they need to increase their property taxes to pay for the replacement of all the infrastructure that we haven't been responsible for in the past, and setting money aside to replace. And so we're chasing the replacement of this aging infrastructure with growth. And I think that what's being missed out in that discussion is that when you are developing communities and when you're developing neighborhoods, that you have to be able to have the money set aside to invest in transportation, to connect those communities with one another. And it's a part of responsible growth, and it's a part of responsible community development, is to ensure that there's vibrant transportation networks and options for people, so that they don't need to be single occupant vehicles driving around all over the place as we go. So in terms of what's going on in downtown Vancouver with the transit referendum, they're not asking transit questions about bridges that they want to build and other pieces of infrastructure. And this is the government is elected to make decisions, and they should be making decisions on transit, and it's an incredibly important part. And
So you're saying the referendum is exactly.
It's a problem.
Exactly.
Our governments need to be making commitments to investing in transportation options for people. That is not just bigger, wider roads. We know that doesn't work. And so, like you're talking about, light rail, even underground subways, which are as expensive as above ground, like we've seen with the system over in Vancouver. So, but I think that we need to be diversifying our transportation networks and giving people options, biking, creating communities that can be walkable, so that people can live, work, and play in the same neighborhood, and then connecting centers with light rail and rail options.
And when you say we have to be, it's like we should have been, because we're already like 20, 30, 40 years behind the 8 ball. I mean, to me, the need for change is instantaneous. Maybe I'm wrong, but what do you think? I mean, can we dilly-dally for the next 5 or 10 years? So, because with the oncoming environmental disasters, of which they seem to be coming aplenty, we seem to be in trouble.
So there is a sense of trouble. I just want to temper that with the fact that we are in one of the most privileged places in the world. And there are an awful lot of places that are in a lot worse shape than we are. And I think that there has been in this province a lot of fear-mongering in the political circles that the world is coming to an end. There is a lot of trouble, and we have got to address that trouble. And I think that the desire to move very, very quickly scares people away from actually making the decisions that need to be made. And I think that as a responsible government, we need to introduce these ideas to people and say, here are the options. Help us arrive and find the solutions to the problems that are facing us. And so for me, I think that there is a need for us to change away from being a fossil fuel powered economy and society, to be kinder to the environment, to recognize that it does the environment and the ecosystems around us produce and provide the natural resources that we need and that we use, that we need to live, but that the changing is more of a transition than, especially, there's lots of fear that if the Green Party gets elected tomorrow, then the whole world will be turned upside down, and that's not the case. The way that we need to approach this is to say, look, identify what those problems are, and then get together, working together, back to the electoral reform and the participatory democracy. Make sure that all three parties in that legislature are working together towards solving the problems that are in front of us. So,
Adam, I know you wanted to talk a bit about pipelines, so maybe we can finish off with that.
Well, I'm an intervener in the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain pipeline application, and I cannot believe that how this process has unfolded. The National Energy Board process has been has made me it's made me sad, it's made me angry, it's made me frustrated, a whole host of emotions, and all of those emotions haven't necessarily got a different result, but I can say that that it has been an awful process to be a part of. As Andrew Weaver pointed out in a blog post, the National Energy Board has found in favor of the company 97 or 98% of the time, which means that only 2% of the time have the interveners actually been able to get the kind of answers and things that they need from the company. And I would say that the people in this area need to be very, very concerned, and we need to be able to compel Trans Mountain and the National Energy Board to answer the very serious questions that we have around the safety of the pipeline, and in this area, in the Capital Regional District, the safety of transporting diluted bitumen through our waters. They have very, very clearly not been able to answer what happens when diluted bitumen goes into the ocean. And I think that should just be a very baseline prerequisite, that if you're going to transport diluted bitumen by tanker, that you know and have an understanding and are able to clean it up if there's a disaster. And it's not really a question of if there's going to be a disaster, but when, right? So,
Adam Olsen, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for watching Citizens Forum this week.